Welcome back, folks. Look at this. I'm with my new friend, Maxine Perchuk, who is going to do my astrological chart reading for the first time. I've never had this done before, Maxine, so I'm really appreciative. But welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And it's
great. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure getting to know you a little bit. Now, just to set the table here, you reached out to me about a month ago or so from, I'm assuming, seeing one of the videos with Annette or Linda G.
That's right, Annette and Linda G.
Yeah. And then you reached out and said, I'd love to do your chart for you. Just give me the exact time you were born. And so we've done that. And now you've prepared everything for us. So I was like, well, geez, this would be a terrific show to share with everyone. And I'm new to this world, although, you know, I've known Annette Dion for a long time, and she's always urged me to get my chart read, and she's tipped off a couple people, but I had never followed through with it. So I'm really appreciative for this today.
Well, I'm really grateful to actually have this opportunity to do this with you.
Thank you, Maxine. Okay, so Maxine, you're in Staten Island now, and
Staten Island, New York.
Yeah, and so do you want to just briefly talk about your background? Like, what do you do?
Well, I recently retired from my job as a school psychologist. And I'm also a licensed marriage and family therapist. And what I do now, I mean, I've been doing astrology for many years, but obviously it wasn't my main job while I was working full time for the Department of Education. But I've been doing it for many years. So full time right now, I'm doing the astrology. I'm also, we have this in common that I'm working on a documentary.
Nice.
So that's how I split my time. Retirement is it's so wonderful.
I'm glad you're there. I'm looking forward to it when I'm about 90, I think. So when did you? I was just going to say, I get the feeling though, that you are doing so much of what you really want to do right now. This is true. Yeah, I have 2 full-time jobs, and I would say 95% of both, you know, so yeah, I look forward to waking up every day. So there's that. It's just, I have a hard time punching out, turning off the clock. It's 24/7 for me. Yeah,
I imagine that will always be the case for you.
Yeah,
I mean, just based on your chart.
Yeah, really interesting. Okay, so are we ready to get into this now? Oh, you know what? I would like to know, Maxine. So your what got you into astrology? Your fascination with it? What you're in? How did you pursue this endeavor?
Well, I would say that since college, I've had an interest in all metaphysical subjects. And I've gone through the gamut of palm reading, numerology, astrology. And I actually think the key thing, the pivotal book that I read was Steve Forrest's Inner Sky. I don't know if you're familiar with any of his books.
No, I'm jotting this down.
But he laid out the concepts so logically, methodically, in a way that you could really grasp the archetypes, and that it stayed with me. That was back in 1988. Again, I'm always rotating metaphysical interests. So in 2015, 2014, something about that, I just picked it up again and then, threw myself into it. I've been, taking classes with him and threw myself into it. He's almost the only astrologer I can listen to.
But why is that? Because he can put things in layman's terms, basically, or be so thorough and logical?
You'd probably have to listen to him, but he makes it so accessible. It's not these. He has so much depth, and he puts things into stories that you can relate to, not abstract concepts of duality and binary this. And it's just so much depth and yet so much simplicity. And yeah, so I would recommend anything that he's got lots of books, lots of tapes. He has an online school now.
Gotcha.
Oh, look, I've become a commercial for Steve Forrest.
Yeah, I was like, we can chill a little bit today. That's fine.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, I'll definitely look into that for sure. So, okay. So now when you do a reading like this, yeah, what does that entail? Like, are we ready to roll here?
Generally, what I do is I explain just a little bit about why astrology makes sense. And then I go into the sun, moon, and ascendant. I don't know if you've ever heard of those, but those are the three main areas. And then I talk about the past life story.
All right.
I did though bring a little, I did a little astrological investigative work though. And I ran some of your what's called transits and progressions. Those are to indicate how your chart is being affected now by what's going on in the sky. And so I chose something that I thought should have been going on the last couple of years to ask about it. And then I figured maybe we'd close with something that's going to happen in the future. You know, when in astrology, when you make quote unquote predictions, in a sense, there really is no such thing as that, because the symbols are so broad. They can mean so many things. You can just sort of hone in on well, you know what, I'll just go ahead and
yeah, please do.
And demonstrate it. So for instance, I noticed that that Saturn, transiting Saturn, was it's actually, the period is just coming to an end. And this is sort of would have been the peak period, excuse me, the peak period. And it has something to do, the area of life that it is affecting, or has just affected, it's probably coming to an end now, is the fourth house, which has to do with home, family, roots, and even beyond that, psychological roots. So any of it could be the actual physical home, or it could be, your psychological work, anything to do with, like I said, home, family, and your inner work and roots. And it looks to me, based on Saturn, that you would have had, well, you could call it an opportunity, but it would have something that would have required a lot of hard work and discipline, persistence, commitment, because those are all the key things that Saturn requires. So when Saturn touches a part of your chart, it demands that you either step up and do the work and gain some maturity and good self-confidence with yourself, or alternately, you could just fall into a depression and make no progress and feel not so great about yourself. So I'm just wondering, in that area, oh, and one more thing about it, it's falling in the fourth house, but it's making an angle to something in your sixth house, which has to do with your work life. So I'm wondering if there's anything that, some project that has recently been coming to a head that has increased your feeling of maturity and given you more sense of confidence also in your work life.
Well, so I have two things happening right now. One is I just finished my latest documentary piece, which was, it was on the blizzard of '78, which was the largest storm in New England's, in the 20th century New England, the most impactful. And I'm in Gloucester, Massachusetts, right on the coast, a little north of Boston. And we were severely impacted by that. So that is what my head has been buried in for about 6 weeks now. And that actually aired, it debuted yesterday, and it's done very well. But what's interesting is my audience, I work for the public access cable station as one of my full-time jobs. My audience is so hyper local, so I'm telling stories that have already been told. I'm using images most people have already seen. but also when I turn the camera off, I walk outside and I see everybody I'm talking about. Like you're like a hometown anchorman. You're doing this for your neighborhood and you know everybody. So there's a bit of a larger margin of forgiveness, perhaps, than if you were doing this for a larger audience. But you also feel an extra weight and responsibility to get the story right and to tell it in a way that doesn't ruffle feathers, or you have to be delicate with things of that nature. So the response has been great so far, and there were some very touchy subjects in it. A local a crew of 5 on a rescue boat perished trying to reach another boat over. So and those family members are still around, so you have to be very sensitive to that. So I hope I balanced that correctly. So that was one thing that's happened. And also, I've been living in this home with my wife for more than 10 years now, and it needs a complete rehaul. So literally it's imminent that we're actually tearing this place apart and doing a complete rebuild. And that's literally happening right now.
Okay.
Yeah. So those are 2 big things that I've been working on. The home aspect of it has been coming to a head for a long time. That's about to come to fruition.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So it's interesting.
Yeah, it's always good to see how the symbols play out. So it's literally home.
Yeah.
And then the subject of roots.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, excuse me. Okay. So I'm going to move on to talking a little bit about astrology.
Okay.
So the value of astrology and what is it? So basically, it gives us the ability to look at the blueprint of our life lesson plan and learn what our highest aspirations are. What's the greatest thing we can achieve this life? The chart also tells us how we're vulnerable to taking some wrong turns. So you've heard the saying, as above, so below. This applies to the planets. All the planets in the sky are in our consciousness, in our psyche. They symbolize psychological needs. So for instance, the sun is our desire to shine, to be the center of our solar system. Mercury is our need to learn and be the bringer of messages to others. Venus is our need to be in harmony with others and the environment. And Mars is our will to survive and the need to conquer our fears. Every planet's power can be used to advance our spiritual evolution if we can take the high road. It can also be used to take a less evolved path. It's all a matter of choice, choices we're often unaware of. For example, the sun in us wants to shine. We can put this ability to shine, this charisma and influence, to a higher purpose. It gives us leadership skills and the confidence to make important decisions, even if they're unpopular. Alternately, this need to shine can manifest in a need for constant approval and adulation, a runaway ego whose only concern is for the self. So let's go further into the sun. This represents our primary identity, our self-image, our main purpose here. If we're true to the values of the sun, we will be sane, sunny, and vital. Let's start with sanity. All the planets revolve around the sun. Pluto might want to take a different route that day, but too bad, the sun rules. It maintains the order in the sky. In the same way, the values of the sun must override all the other voices in our head for us to live a sane life. Because imagine what your life would be like if you were compelled to act out every thought, every impulse, every feeling, rather than most consistently pursuing your main purpose. It would be chaos. So the sun gives us sanity. Additionally, our sun literally makes us sunny. When we live in accordance with the values of our sun, we're lit up from the inside and likely described as having a sunny personality. We develop a charisma from being truly ourselves and a gravitas. And finally, we get our vitality from the sun. Life on Earth is only possible because of the sun's light and energy. Similarly, without the energizing rays of our own inner sun, we would get depressed and cold. So anyone suffering from depression, get acquainted with your sun, follow that path. So let's start with an example from your chart. Your sun is in Aries in the 6th house. With the sun in Aries, you are the spiritual warrior in the house of the servant. The basis of your identity is connected with the god of war. What's a warrior? A warrior is someone who is passionate, fiery, willing to die for a cause. A warrior in its highest incarnation is loyal, direct, honest, and a protector of those who cannot protect themselves. A warrior exemplifies the will to survive and claims life and claims their space. This energy must be expressed in its right form, or it can express itself in a destructive form. The warrior energy can build up in us and spill out as anger or irritability. It can result in using too much force. It can attract arguments, violence, or petty dictators into our lives. So we must learn to consciously channel this energy, or we will attract unwanted, stressful situations. Now, as an Aries, you need worlds to conquer. But what happens in period of downtime? Let's say on a particular day, there's no apparent battle. Well, then it's important that you keep the Aries energy moving. You go out running, you skydive, you have a risky conversation, you have sex. Aries loves these pastimes. The Mars energy needs to circulate. Most importantly, as an Aries, you're learning to gain courage. You likely have more courage than the average bear, but you will gain even more courage as you evolve. You're learning to remain calm in stressful situations, and you're learning about the right use of force. Yes, everybody has to defend themselves, but no more than that. In regard to your Mars energy, I want to mention that you have what's called an out-of-bound Mars. This is very interesting. It's rather uncommon. This means that Mars was outside of its normal path when you were born, farther from the sun's orbit than is typical. The result is that your potential for fierceness, courage, endurance, survival, protection of loved ones is way beyond the norm. Remember what I said about the Aries willingness to die for a cause. In a sense, you've got that in spades. To give you an example of someone who had an out-of-bound Mars, Martin Luther King Jr. So that's the kind of fierceness and stubbornness it brings with it. With your sun in the 6th house, your life revolves around meaningful work. That's why I was saying earlier when you said, oh yeah, when I retire, and I thought to myself, haha.
I believe you.
Other people might prefer to take vacations, to have a long weekend, but when you find your right work, performing that work is of utmost importance to you. It's also most important to you that you do work that is of service to others. When I first saw your work on the internet and how you help people expand their businesses.
Yes.
And I thought, my first thought was sort of jaded, oh, someone else who's doing something commercial. But you actually are performing a real service to the community, and you're sincere, because with the sun in your 6th house, I have no doubt that you sincerely want to help others. There's no question. The that's a key thing about the sixth house, and other aspects that I'll tell you about in a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I mentioned that every resource has a higher and lower octave. In its highest form, you develop a skill which gives you a sense of self-respect, and then you use this skill to help a larger community. A potential misstep with this configuration is to become enslaved to service, to feel like a servant. We want to avoid this by making sure you don't sacrifice your own well-being. Because, you know, here you've got the tireless warrior in the house of service, so you don't want to burn yourself out. A planet in the sixth house also indicates the importance of finding a mentor. This is the house of the mentor-mentee relationship, craftsperson, apprentice, guru, disciple, uncle, nephew, all those things are archetypes for that. So I don't know if you already have developed that mentor-mentee relationship, but it's optimal for you to find a mentor for the skills and mindset you're looking to develop. Ideally, you would continue the lineage by passing on what you've learned to those who come after you. Now, Chiron, the symbol for the wounded healer, is in the sixth house there. So this tells me that there's some prior injury connected to service or mentorship, but I don't know anything more than that. Before we move on, I want to mention that this desire to connect with and serve others is also confirmed by your moon phase, which I'll talk about shortly.
Okay.
So the next logical step after we look at your sun sign is to go to the ruler of that sign, which is Mars, and see where that is in your chart and what that tells us, because that's related to your solar aspirations. That's all tied in. So we find Mars in the 8th house of death, sex, and the occult, and anything else that's too dark or taboo to talk about in polite company. Mars is in the sign of Gemini, which is the sign of the storyteller, teacher, student, and it's associated with language, communication, and the media. The planet Saturn is also in that 8th house, which tells us where the great work of our life is to be found. So learning about and passing on teachings related to taboo subjects, such as people's subconscious drives, sex, death, or the occult, is tied into this larger solar life purpose. Saturn also tells us this is an area in which you've been blocked or limited in some way in the past. You know, it might be coming in with a past life issue in that regard. And it's interesting, the same theme is echoed elsewhere in the chart. Your 3rd house, Saturn rules Capricorn, and Capricorn is the 3rd house of communication, learning, and teaching. So that's very strong. As well, I wouldn't have to look at your chart to see that. It's visible in what you're doing. The next most important planet to talk about is the moon. The moon represents the feeling side of ourselves, the dreamy, imaginative side, our overriding mood, our heart, the way we care for ourselves, and the way we care for others. Well, the sun is the key to our purpose here. Living in accord with the moon is the key to our happiness.
This is a lot of information.
Yeah, I hope it's not too much information.
No, I'm in.
It's a lot to absorb, but you can ask a question anytime you want to.
Okay.
If it just seems too jam-packed with facts. So as I said, well, the sun is the key to the purpose here. The moon tells us where our heart is. So we have to be willing to go with our heart if we want happiness. We can't worry about logic. The moon is irrational. It makes no logical sense. For some people, hitting a little ball into 18 holes is the key to their happiness. For others, hanging off the side of a mountain. Other people get invigorated by walking into a shopping mall. So let's talk about the moon in Libra in the 11th house. With your moon in Libra, you have the heart of the artist, the counselor, and the lover in the house of friends. The goal of the Libran moon is to calm down, to feel serenity, to feel peace. Most people think of Libra as being the sign of balance, but more accurately, it's the sign that wants to gain balance, to maintain its delicate equilibrium, and has several resources to help with this. The Libran moon is equipped with an aesthetic sensitivity in order to be able to appreciate works of art, poem, nature. A Libran moon also may very well endow you with artistic or creative talent. This seems quite likely since I see the planet of imagination in the house of creative expression for you. The imaginative, creative moon, coupled with the god of love and beauty. Relationships are very important to the Libran moon. So the Libran moon is endowed with the qualities which will enable you to establish rapport with others. A Libran moon is sensitive to opposing sides of an argument. The Libran moon knows that two conflicting arguments can both be valid. That Libran energy can see another person's side, even if it's diametrically opposed to your own. People may feel comfortable telling you about themselves because of this ability to understand the viewpoint of another without judgment. Librans are also very attuned to the concept of justice and want to know that everyone is being treated fairly. So, what could go wrong? One challenge with a Libra moon is that your moon might be interested in peace at the expense of honesty. A false peace is a potential trap for a Libran moon. So it's important to remain very conscious of combining the Libran diplomacy with honesty. A Libran moon can also become so attuned to another's needs that you neglect your own. The quintessential codependent we hear about in 12-step meetings, enabling, a partner's bad behavior. Now, of course, I'm not saying this is your situation. I'm just saying what the high and low manifestations of the energy. And then there's the challenge that accompanies being able to see every side of a situation. Libra moon can weigh every possibility until an opportunity is gone. So what's the remedy for that? Well, some people say that you do best when you take the leap and then make the best decision at the time. And rather than second guess yourself, jump in as if you are wholeheartedly in it and have no doubts. My thinking on it is this, that Libra is an air sign, which is related to the intellect. But the intellect is not compatible with figuring out feelings. So I find it's best to bypass thought and tap strictly into the feeling sense, to gain answers. In regard to self-care, everything we spoke about is soothing. The beauty of nature, art, conversation with a friend, seeing justice at work. All these things make your heart glad. And to maintain balance, you need a diet that includes these things. I have to interject something that I haven't yet brought up, though.
Sure.
Due to the fact that astrology imitates life, your chart is complicated. The moon, as well as the moon being there in Libra, you've also got Pluto, which is a horse of a completely different color. Pluto is the god of the underworld, which is conjunct your moon. So that the art that you may want to enjoy, that museum you want to visit might be the Holocaust Museum. Libra enjoys being polite, graceful interactions, but Pluto is the planet that wants passionate, honest, direct, intense connection, truth. You want to dredge up what's beneath the surface. You want to have eye contact. When someone tells you what's going on, you can have penetrating insight into their situation and can share that with them. Of course, not everyone wants penetrating insight, but there can be a happy marriage between Pluto and Libra. I think there's, always a way to combine kindness of the moon and the diplomacy of Libra and the honest insights of Pluto. And, I've watched you, with your interviews with Annette and Linda, and I notice you're so terribly diplomatic. I can see that. I said before that with a Libra moon, people will feel comfortable telling you about themselves. Well, with the Pluto in the mix, we take that a step further. They very well may feel comfortable telling you secrets about themselves concerning topics we don't usually freely share. But with Pluto, there's that vibe that you're aware and accepting of people's more hidden sides. Now we'll address the 11th house. The 11th house is known as the house of friends, but more accurately, it refers to groups of people with whom you share a cause. Now, you could, of course, become friends with people in these peer groups, but that's not the function of this house. You're working towards a common goal. So the purpose of the group could take on any form of that Libra and Pluto quality. The archetypes have so many different possibilities. You probably know a lot better than me what I'm talking about, but I'll give you some silly examples. For instance, people who deliver flowers to people whose family members are in hospice. That's the joining of the Libra moon Pluto energy. Or groups of artists that lost children in car accidents, now making art, warning of the perils of drunk driving. Or maybe you're part of a group of psychotherapists who counsel people that have gone through truly dark, unspeakable experiences. Maybe you advocate for justice and want to expose dark secrets of a hypocritical ruling class. Or maybe you look at how deep wounding can affect love relationships. All these contain elements of the moon, Pluto, and Libra. One more important element to look at that I touched on earlier, I wanted to talk about the moon phase. At the time of your birth, the moon was in what's called the waxing gibbous phase. This moon phase is all about cooperative ventures with other people, deep friendships, soulful interactions, and sexual connection. You're happy when your life is interconnected with others. There's a great need to be of value to others in the community, to be of service, to be a partner, a group member, a teacher, and a student. So it's interesting because these all refer back to what we said earlier about your sun sign in that 6th house. When you see it multiple times in a chart, it's like a big underline that these things are so. As I said, this echoes the sentiment of what was mentioned. It's most definitely in your soul plan to offer a service to others, to be deeply connected to individuals and groups, and to accept yourself and other people in their Plutonian wholeness, with the shadow, to allow for people to acknowledge their woundedness, to look at and care for your own woundedness. And of course, there's no greater catalyst for discovering where our deepest injuries are than getting into intense relationships. Anyone in an intimate relationship is likely to experience, for instance, romantic jealousy. Jealousy is so often triggered in a love relationship. The question is, how do we handle that? One possible scenario is we suffer silently, but build resentment. Maybe we try to punish our significant other. Another possibility is we try to control our partner. Maybe we tell them not to talk to someone, or we tell them how to dress. Maybe we stalk them. That's all examples of the shadow side of Pluto. The high end of Pluto is maybe we get the courage to say we're upset. Maybe it doesn't come out perfectly, but we share our feelings with our partner and find out that they care about our feelings and are willing to be reassuring. Maybe they hold our hand as we recall past betrayals. That's all the spirit of Pluto. Allowing the wounds to surface without judgment and helping one another heal is high Plutonian work. So let's return to the 11th house, the house of groups and life goals. Any planet in the 11th house gains more power as you age. It reflects what you're aiming for in your later years. So you'll likely notice taking on more of those lunar and Plutonian qualities as time goes on. The 11th house represents your aspirations. And it also represents the people that will help you with those aspirations. So become friends with the people who will help you attain your goals. Choosing people who have those Libran moon and Plutonian characteristics bring you closer to your goals. A danger with the 11th house is to substitute aimless socializing for goal-oriented behavior. Choosing the right associates is instrumental in achieving your goals. With the 11th house, in order to achieve your aspirations, you need the help of a group. You need partners, and you need to keep your eye on the prize. You also need an astute sense of group dynamics and politics in order to successfully navigate a group. With your moon and Pluto in Libra in that house, you can take the role of therapist healer in a group setting to help counteract the sometimes darker dynamics that occur in a group setting. I don't know if you've felt that you've had to do any of that, or you've felt more of an ease in those group settings.
I'm always at ease in group settings. I'm always a bit of a natural leader.
Yes.
Thought influencer, maybe.
Okay.
That's always come very naturally to me, and I know it's not easy for other people to fill those roles.
Yes, yes.
And so when I recognize that, I tend to amplify myself to make it easier for other people.
Oh, that's lovely. That's very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, using your leadership skills in the service of others. That's nice.
And that's just in a group dynamic amongst friends.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, but I'm also like, a lot of my time is spent mentoring small business owners, and they just want you to visit them and listen to them. It's not necessarily, hey, I've got a great idea for a sale or to, increase retail this summer. It's more like they just kind of want to vent and want to know they're being, that someone's listening to them.
Oh, so you act as their therapist, their counselor.
It's all that rolled in one. It's crazy. But I suppose when I was starting my business, I was picking the brains of all these small business owners because I don't have a mind for business or finances. It was just, I needed to make a living out of being myself, like a professional friend. I used to joke about it when I was younger. Like, I just want to be a professional friend. How do I go? And I just didn't know how to go about doing that. And then it manifested itself into this Bridge Cape Ann, where I have, anywhere from 80 to 150 clients at a time, but they're friends and I've known them forever. And it's basically, you're just a professional friend to them. You're helping them wherever they need help.
Oh, okay. So, it's interesting. So there it is, the service to the community, the group.
And also what I was doing too, I was building up this large local social media following, and I knew that small business owners didn't have time, money, personnel, imagination to curate their own social media presence. So I made mine larger and larger and let them use my outlet to reach more people that way. So that's how the bridge came to be. And that parlayed into my getting the job with a local cable station as like a hometown anchorman or creating the creative content, because they saw what I was doing there and they coveted the audience and my relationship with the community. And so now I'm doing that double duty.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah, because when you look at your chart, when I look at your chart, aside from all the creativity and the oomph and the wanting to help, you can see that you're not someone who should ever work for anyone else, be under anyone's thumb. I mean, if you had to take a regular job, it would have to be something that you had incredible independence, because it's just not your nature to, read someone else's script.
Maxine, that's exactly correct. I have a hard time, even if the boss is benevolent, like it's I have a real difficult time with it. Yeah.
Well, thank God you've been able to create your own.
Yes. Because
you would feel like a prisoner. Yeah. An angry prisoner.
This is true. This is very true. Yeah.
Well, it's wonderful that you know yourself enough to have done that.
Thank you. Took a long time to get there, but then you get there.
Yeah. Oh, believe me, I know. I'm no one that should ever have worked for anyone either. And I did my city service.
Yeah. So
let's move on to the rising sign. Yeah, fortunately, you've made all the right choices.
Well, recently, yeah.
Because an astrology reading can help you make right choices, but almost as important, it could just confirm that you've made the right ones. So on to the rising sign. The rising sign or ascendant, you've probably heard that term.
Yes.
It's the third prong of what's called the primal triad. The primal triad is equivalent to name, rank, and serial number, like a quick sketch of your astrological signature. It sort of sums things up, a snapshot of the key defining characteristics. So here's the third foot. The ascendant, or the rising sign, is the mask you wear. We call it a mask, but it's actually more like stained glass, coloring the other energies that you radiate. It's how you dawn on people who don't necessarily know you well. For anyone to be comfortable navigating the social world, we have to have a style with which we're comfortable relating to people. We don't want to reinvent the wheel every time we greet someone on the street. We generally assume a particular and consistent persona. That gives us a sense of ease in the world, a sense of confidence. When we're true to our rising sign, we attract the kinds of experiences that bring us closer to our karmic goals. We draw to us the people that will lead us to the life we should live, and filter out the people with whom we don't share the same interests. Now, when I was looking up your rising sign, I noticed that it's just mere degrees away from, like, between signs, between Libra and Scorpio. So I'm telling you what your rising sign is, assuming that the time of birth that you gave me was absolutely precise. When you listen to it, you would know whether it's right. And if it's sounding like it's wrong with Scorpio, then it would have to be Libra, which I had, told you a little bit about earlier. So your rising sign for this precise time of birth is Scorpio, otherwise known as the shaman, the psychotherapist, the hypnotist for the transformative qualities. We just talked about Pluto a few moments ago. Pluto is one of the ruling planets of Scorpio. And so those same ideas apply to the sign of Scorpio. We talked about the need for intensity, for honesty, the willingness to look at topics that, as my teacher says, are hot, underground, and you don't want to go there. These are the subjects that frighten people and make them uncomfortable. Death, disease, sex, the occult, our personal humiliations, our deepest wounds, the darker things we've done or think about. Everything that people attending a stereotypical cocktail party would like to avoid. So imagine you're at a workplace secret Santa party. People are unwrapping presents. Someone gets a hot pink mug with a kitten stamped on it that keeps things warm for 6 hours. Everyone's talking about Christmas trees and handing out candy canes. And you turn to your coworker and say, Jane, what's your thought on mercy killings? That's the spirit of the Pluto and how it can stand out and get you uninvited from these events.
Yeah, I would think so.
Now, you with your highly developed sense of contextually appropriate behavior, you have that moon in Libra, you would know not to do that. But that Libra moon is very attuned to what's allowed in polite conversation. But you've got this strong Pluto conjuncting the moon and this Scorpio rising that wants to cut through the bullshit to what's real. My guess is you've got a tremendous bullshit detector and can sense when someone is hiding something or being insincere. Also, I can imagine that if you've ever chosen the wrong people to surround yourself with, you've probably heard the words, oh, you're too intense. Now, if you've become at ease with the Scorpion part of yourself, it's likely you've found people confessing things to you, saying things like, you know, I've never told anyone this before, or I don't know why I'm telling you this. People can sense the depth. They sense you won't judge. They sense maybe that you've wrestled with your own demons. The Scorpion goal is to delve down deep into the deep, fragile, volatile, hellish places in our psyche where no one wants to go and bring them into the light where we look at and process some of that shadow material that's weighing us down. Now, it's funny because when I see you, when I saw you on YouTube, I didn't feel that intensity, although you're dealing with intense subjects. Does that, but when I look at your chart, I see that they are strongly. Did you have a thought about that?
No, I mean, you brought up a little while ago things that may seem difficult to bring up, like certain humiliations or things of that nature. I have problems with that, but I also use humor to disarm any situation too. That's sort of what I've always done. I don't know where that comes from, but I've always feel like I'm perceptive about people and more comfortable around people and can read folks to a certain degree. And like, it's like, cut to the BS, when someone's BSing you. Like, you can't BS a BS artist. It's, that's always prevalent, but I don't know. It's like, I've never really taken deep dives into my own psychology or try to answer the why I am what I am, which I also think is a reason why I'm sort of like even Steven compared to most people too. I don't, my needle doesn't do this. I try, and I work hard to keep it at that because the world around you is always doing this. And I'm not an alarmist by any nature. I take things as they come. My big questions, Maxine, is like, a lot of people assume what happens like after you pass. I'm so focused on living in the now that the future doesn't really bother me. I don't really sweat it out the
Mhm.
way others do. Or like I have immediate family members who have like an abject fear of death, or that the clock's always running out. And part of me is always like, well, isn't this something to look forward to? Like there's something else happens. There's a graduation,
Mhm.
and it's, in a manner of speaking, that occurs. But not that I want to die, but I don't think it's like, I don't see it as the end.
Well, that's very Scorpion. What you just said there is very Scorpion. Yeah, Scorpio embraces that idea. They want to look death straight in the face and say, okay, good, you're coming. Well, good, I'll get there and in the meantime, I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do here now.
Well, it blows my mind, Maxine, that most people act as though it's not going to happen to them. Like they're so surprised. Like, yeah, well, how do you think this ends?
Well, yeah, which is so much, has been so much of the motivation for my metaphysical study. I've also studied mediumship, and I want to be so sure that that is waiting for me over there, and that I'm not dropping into the abyss.
Right.
So yeah, that Scorpion willingness to look at the reality of it gives us more a sense of purpose. And yes, and if you have that certainty that there actually is something even better waiting, that this is actually the hell world, and that's the
So that's so interesting you say that. I have very immediate members who believe that this is hell that they're living in now, and it was honestly like, would you even know, or why? So that's just not how I think.
So I'll say I'll assume that for the moment that Scorpio is your rising, and I'll say some more about it. When we suppress material in the unconscious, it takes a lot of psychic energy to do that. So it frees us up when we do that work. When we look at the shadow material that's weighing us down, once we go through that journey, whether it's through a psychotherapist, a shaman, a vision quest, our 12-step sponsor, writing in our journal, making art, writing a book, a film, or as you say, coming to terms with the idea of death, we come out the other side lighter, freer, with more energy to devote to conscious choices and to become more authentically ourselves. That's the high side of Scorpio. So where can we get into trouble? Staying in that dark place on a continual basis, stewing, stalking, stinging. Those are low Scorpion activities. It's easy to see how, after allowing oneself to acknowledge and revisit dark scenes from our life, that we might be subject to depression and start to feel hopeless and maudlin. We might obsessively replay the negative memories, the humiliations, the betrayals. That's why it's important to regularly step out of that world and the incessant focus on the shadow. But that sounds like you've got this down. And walk in nature, meditate, love our friends, go on an adventure, do charitable work, any of the activities that revitalize us. So remember, the ultimate goal of Scorpion work is to reclaim our power by facing wounds and using that freed energy to live with more vitality. So I mentioned earlier that if you're true to your rising sign, you'll draw to you the experiences to live the life you planned. So with Scorpio on the rise, for instance, this reading is a perfect example, because you put yourself out there as someone open to unearthing truth and with an interest in occult. A strong Scorpio can get you invited to an array of possible events, a Wicca meeting, the mystery schools, a workshop on sex abuse, a movie about serial killers, a class in the art of embalming, World War II adventure, tantric sex. All those capture the spirit and intensity of Scorpio. But there's more to add, though, to the story of your rising sign. Since astrology is just as complex as life, your chart can't be simplified. In addition to Scorpio symbolizing how you dawn on people, the planet Uranus sitting on the cusp of the house also describes your preferred public persona. Uranus is the planet symbolizing rebellion, genius, the outlier. For you to fully embody that planet, you'd have to probably have made a lot of traditional people unhappy or angry. It's like you have a sign hanging on you that says, I don't color within the lines. I don't know if you've found that, or earlier in your life if you found that, but I see that Uranus hanging out right there on that rising sign.
Well, before I found my voice, so to speak, I think I acted inappropriately because I just didn't, I was a comedian for years and wrote for other comedians. I was bad at it because I didn't have my own voice. So, when you're a kid and you're funny, growing up, it's not like you have mentors saying, oh, you should do this or you should do that. Usually they're telling you to not do that. And that can manifest into different ways as you start to get older and you go through college and those kicking and screaming years afterwards of like, how do I make a living out of being funny or being myself when I don't know who I am yet? And so that I learned, so I feel like I wasted my 20s for the most part, because I was at a very, very comfortable home situation, like living situation. But professionally, I had no creative satisfaction professionally and didn't know how to build the skill sets to get where I wanted to be happy. And so honestly, I was in my 30s. I think I was 32 or 33. And I said, I want to turn my life completely upside down. I've never wanted a real job. I don't like big cities, but I'm going to move to Los Angeles and get a job in Hollywood and turn everything upside down and make myself grow, be uncomfortable. And so that's what I did. And I didn't even start to feel like an adult until my low to mid 30s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's something you really launched yourself, though.
Yeah. Yeah. I just wanted to just take anything I was comfortable with and just go upside down, Oh,
that's so the spirit of Uranus. It's all about taking all the messages we grew up with that, instilled in us by our families and the culture right around us and saying, yeah, but who am I really? And getting rid of that. So that's interesting. And it also corresponded with what's called the Saturn cycle. You've probably heard that term. Saturn goes around in 30 years. Okay, so let's pick up on your rising sign. Where did I leave off? Uranus. Uranus people, they think outside the box. That's why they can come up with new ideas and novel solutions to problems. It also symbolizes the latest technologies. Wherever you find Uranus, you have to throw away many of the lessons from the dominant culture and make up a new game plan. It's easy to feel alienated from others when you see things so differently, but that's better than being alienated from yourself. You've probably had to endure some judgment and criticism. I wrote, I made this note beforehand, before we were talking about it. You probably had to endure some judgment and criticism as a result of following your own path. The idea is to live a very individuated path and find your fellow offbeat thinkers.
Yes. Can I throw something in here, Maxine?
Please, go ahead.
One thing that drives me crazy, as someone who I consider myself a natural leader, it's people in leadership positions who lack vision. drive me bananas. How do you get there to begin with? And how do you continue to be in this position? You know, so I'm always trying to put my different twist on things, you know, just to whatever it's to reinvent, to reinvigorate, whatever it may be. Because you know, I never lived by the adage of, I just want a piece of the pie. To me, the pie is stale and old and someone else's. I want to bake my own pie.
Yes. Uranus needs their own pie.
Yeah. I digress.
What's that?
I digress. So that's.
Oh, no, that's fine. So to reiterate, your sun or path in life is that of the warrior, the survivor, the daredevil in the house of service. Your moon or your heart is in the sign of the peacemaker, the artist, the counselor, in the house related to community efforts and aspirations. And your public persona or your mask is that of the shaman, the hypnotist, the psychotherapist, the transformer. So there it is. There's your primal triad. We're going to move on to your nodal story. Did you have any questions or want to mention anything before we move to the nodal story?
No, it's surprising me, Maxine, because I didn't know what to expect today, you know, and it's always like, okay, is this just going to be very vague and very topical that you can just sort of cherry pick what you think makes sense to you? But I will say it, I think you're hitting on a lot of points that make very clear sense to me and seem to ring true, which it's impressive, it's encouraging, it's reassuring in a lot of ways. So I'm really enjoying this.
Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah, and I love reading, and that's why I love this particular type of astrology so much, because it has such depth. It's not predictive, like, oh, and you're gonna right. win the lottery, or it's more about the deeper lessons beneath it that are there sitting in your chart. So let's move on to the nodal story, my personal favorite thing to do. This is another thing that really drew me to this form of astrology, because now, of course, I can't tell you I can't give you dates and names of a past life. It's a feeling. It's the issues wrapped up in a story, like a novel. You know, a true story in which all the facts are made up. That's basically what you can do in explaining what the past life story is. So the nodal story, this is the main karmic lesson you're dealing with this life, and it springs from a prior life. We look to the south node of the moon to understand the past, and we look to the north node for the remedy. The south node of the moon is where we store the past life emotional memories, not the intellectual memories. We rarely remember names or the precise events, but we've all had that feeling about a period of history or a set of circumstances that felt familiar. So not only can we get more information into what past life predicament you faced, but there is actually a prescription for unresolved past life issues written into your chart. The south node tells us what the problem was, and the north node tells us how to solve it. At the south node, we feel a familiarity with that way of being. It's like a default setting. To achieve the north node, we have to be willing to feel like a beginner. Think of a person who's been an alcoholic for a decade. That's the south node. That's what they're used to. Then think of them going to their first AA meeting. It's new and unfamiliar. Instead of sitting home alone or in a noisy bar drinking, they're abstaining, and they're standing up in front of people, sharing themselves. It takes a lot of persistence to make these new behaviors habitual. Normally, we backslide several times, But as we persevere through the setbacks, it becomes more and more natural to live soberly. This is what it's like to become accustomed to living in accordance with the North Node. So let's talk about the South Node first, the injuries that occurred in the past. Your South Node is in the 8th house, conjunct Mars and Saturn. It's in the South Node is in the sign of Gemini. So we're looking at a fast-paced life. We're looking at someone who had a great facility for language and learning. Oh, do you hear my dogs barking?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know, twice a day they do this baying. Is it interfering with your ability to hear?
No, I can hear perfectly fine. I just,
okay.
Is this the usually when the mailman shows up?
No, I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's from the train station nearby. My wife and I are always making guesses of this, what this regular sound is, that some high-pitched thing that I never hear.
Huh.
So, yeah, like I was saying, in the South Node, with that, it doesn't surprise me at all that you have that facility for language, because there it was. As much as the South Node is where we went wrong, we also have the positive qualities that stem from those things. So Gemini is all about language and learning. You definitely have that in spades. You also have Pisces. I know I'm digressing right now just because it's a fun fact that Mercury is in the 5th house of creative expression, and it's governed by Pisces, which is sort of like a chameleon. Pisces can turn it into anything it wants to. So I was wondering, are you good with other people's voices, like impersonate, thinking of different accents and doing them easily? Because with this, I would guess you were.
I've never really tried, put the effort into doing it. I've actually, the one thing I've tried to do is not have an accent myself. Because growing up, we all have the local accent here. And my family owned a wharf for a long time, but they pronounced it waff. And so for years, when I was really, really young, I thought my dad worked at a waff. And it wasn't until I saw the word wharf on a sign that it connected, no, wait, my dad works at a wharf. So from that point on, I made a choice to try to put my R's where they're supposed to be and not add them at the end where they're not supposed to be. It comes out every now and then, but it was more of that instead of trying to do impersonations or things of that nature.
Oh, interesting. So you turned it into making up your own voice.
Yeah, well, try.
But I would have to think that would be something you could do. But again, it could be metaphorical, but sometimes it's literal like that. Okay, so where did we leave off? So we're looking at someone, that's someone who is studying a science of some type with a great amount of passion and scientific distance. We see a strong Mars influence in that house. So we're looking at someone who may have been quite volatile or drew anger or violence from others. We're also seeing Saturn, which suggests emotional distance and perhaps a state of being a father at a premature age. Now remember, anything negative I say here is because, again, you learn the positive lessons from the South Node, but the purpose of looking at the South Node is to look at where we go wrong. So I don't want it to seem like I'm ragging on you, insulting you. No. These are the past life unresolved issues that you want to work on. So the 8th house in which this is all occurring is the house of sex, death, and the occult. I believe that the subject you were studying was a metaphysical religion. I believe you belong to some mystery school, perhaps, or coven, something which was taboo in the culture and involved sexual rites. Using sexuality to transcend normal consciousness is a valid method, But I think the regular expectation this may have caused you to damage your ability to have a deep bonded relationship with one particular partner. So next we look at the ruler of the house, Gemini, to find out more about your character in the past life. The ruler is the planet Mercury in Pisces in the 5th house. We're looking at you as an artist, a mystic, a dreamer, in the house that represents creative expression and children. So with the sign of the mystic here, we have further confirmation of the spiritual path we see you embarking on with your study of occult sciences. See, those two correspond. There was a sincere interest in understanding and transcending consciousness, as well as an ability to access higher realms and use that inspiration for creative ventures. Pisces is also very idealistic and has a tendency towards escapism. I think there was some addiction to the sexuality, and perhaps some substance was used as well. Between the idealism and the escapism, I told you it wasn't going to be pretty.
That's fine. That's fine. We're in it. We're completely in it right now.
I think you were not paying attention to the real danger posed by being open about activities within the secret society. I think that there were murmurs beginning among family members and polite society that you were ignoring. There was a community of people that did not condone the activities you were involved with. So let's talk about the other force that vexed you, got in the way in that life. I think that news of your activities, which were considered heretical at the time, was finding its way to the ruling class, people in polite society who did not approve of these activities. Perhaps you felt immune to prosecution because your own family was part of the society. I think that your family had a woman that they were arranging for you to marry, and they were pressuring you to live a conventional life. I think the straw that broke the camel's back and resulted in them no longer being able to protect you from those in the community that would condemn you was impregnating a woman from a lower caste, someone they didn't consider your social equal. I think the fire and brimstone forces that saw your metaphysical experimentation as working in league with the devil dragged you to the village square and actually publicly executed you.
Yikes.
Hung you, burned you, I don't know.
Can we go back to talking about small businesses, Maxine?
It's a very intense story. But I got the go-ahead astrologically from the symbols there between Pluto being square, and in that 8th house, those are the signs. Tell them the intense story. I don't know if any feel of that resonated with you.
Well, here, yeah, I mean, things, past indiscretions, I'm sure. It's interesting to think of being part of a family or a coven way back when. And then I've always joked about being a redhead and part of the devil's children. And was there ever any sort of effect in a past life that way, where you were considered heretical? But no, it probably warrants a deeper dive, I would imagine.
So the healing. So what's the remedy? We look to the south node of the moon for the karma, and we look to the north node of the moon for the dharma. I'm going to go into detail about the north node in Sagittarius in the 2nd house, because this represents the north node, the most important work you can do this life. I'll summarize a little bit afterwards, but I wanted to go into detail. The second house represents the confidence or self-doubt we have regarding whether we have what it takes to succeed in our mission this life, whether we've developed the resources to do what we came here to do. Traditionally, it's associated with money and material resources to survive. But in your case, with the god of consciousness in the sign of the voyager, scholar, and philosopher, you have to find yourself spiritually, your personal path to transcendence, your unique, we can call it religious or spiritual path, requires an endless journey of wide experience. Your North Star this life is the quest to find your spiritual path. The Sagittarian method of finding spiritual meaning is through direct experience. Sagittarius is known for its habit of saying yes to lots of experiences. So the more mistakes this life, the better. Sag is known to jump in first and ask questions later. So lots of lessons should be learned. Sagittarius is known for packing several lifetimes of experience into this one. I mentioned that Sagittarius is known as the voyager, the scholar, and the philosopher. So let's begin with the physical path of the voyager. Sagittarius learns through travel. Funny coincidence, you live in a seaside community. With Neptune, the god of the sea, here in Sag, journeys over water are highlighted, but by no means is your spiritual quest confined to water travel. Any mode of travel works. Any type of cross-cultural experience to which you're exposed expands your understanding of the world. Even having a neighbor from another country or ethnic background next door accomplishes the same objective of broadening your view of the world. Spiritual pilgrimages are very appropriate for you this life. And because this is your north node, which is situated in direct opposition to your karmic past, taking those long journeys is likely to lead you to places in which these past life events have occurred. Sometimes just going back to the geographical location, the scene of the crime, if you will, and feeling your feelings brings some type of closure or resolution. Let's now consider the intellectual face of the Sagittarian path, the scholar. Higher education, taking classes, reading books, all valid methods of exploration. More ideas to digest and help us figure out what's really meaningful to us. Lots of comparing and contrasting. And finally, the Sagittarian path of the philosopher, which is the key. The philosopher takes the experience gained through travel, through education, through examination of various religious and moral paths, and uses the intuitive function to make sense of it. So to reiterate, you're on a spiritual journey to explore, and discover your own spiritual code and path of transcendence. So what could possibly go wrong? Well, Sagittarius can certainly overextend itself with all the yeses. Another potential is that Sagittarians are so eager to find meaning and live according to their values that they may cling to some idea without adequately testing it. You know, the saying, don't confuse my belief with facts, is the refrain of a Sagittarian gone wrong. A Sagittarius who has latched onto a belief system or religion without the exploration. This is the lower manifestation of the Sagittarian energy. And of course, we've seen it ad nauseum in the political arena these last 5 years. No one becomes more committed to a path once they've found it than Sagittarius. The paradox is that it's important that regarding anything here in the sign of Sag, that you never become too certain, because if you become too certain, then it's time for more experience. So let's recap a little.
Mm-hmm.
The most pressing karmic goal for you is to continue finding your authentic spiritual path. Before you can fully realize that, it's important that you resolve issues that challenged you in the past. This life, you're meant to study consciousness, or maybe a better way of saying it is that you're developing the direct line to a higher consciousness, cosmic consciousness, higher self, however you term it. Your thinking processes are those of the mystic. In the past, you clouded the clear channel with drama and addiction. Now it would advance your soul and open the doors to accomplishing your North Node goal if you access that higher consciousness regularly with discipline and fearlessness. The inspiration you gain from that process will help your soul evolve, clarify things for you, fuel your creative projects, and allow your true voice to emerge and be heard. The other unresolved issue to address is to gain access to that North Node, because those are the prerequisite steps, is to embrace community, family, and cultivate a strong and secure love relationship. You were badly burned in that prior existence, so now this life is a
Literally.
time to, yes, literally, right, maybe literally, yes.
Yeah.
So now it's time to re-enter the human family. Your trust has been damaged. These relationships should be built on kindness, but also honesty. You have to be with people who accept all sides of your nature, not just the well-mannered social veneer. Now, finally, if you want an extra credit assignment, it's this. It's important that you form strong family ties, that you marry in whatever non-traditional or traditional way you decide, but that you share a home. Your relationship may be a bit out of the ordinary, but this life, it's appropriate for you to be making your own rules in that regard. With Jupiter there, you have this tremendous potential for a beautiful family life. It's an area in which, and then that goes to the actual physical home as well. This is an area in which if you were a gambler, you should bet the house. You need a big, beautiful home, whatever that means to you. Your batteries are recharged in the home with both Venus and Jupiter sitting there. Wherever we find Jupiter, we ask ourselves, how have I been underestimating myself? And then we let ourselves imagine we are worthy of whatever we really want. So, like I said, that's your extra credit. I read you in detail the North Node Sagittarian quest, endless quest for your own spiritual path.
Yes.
And that's pretty much it.
Huh. That's fascinating. Yeah.
Thank you.
So let me ask you, Maxine, because obviously you've done charts like this before.
Sure.
So when you're starting to dive deep into someone like me who you don't know at all,
yes,
is it really presenting a clear picture of who I am to you? Well,
yes and no. Like I said, it presents all the potentials. It protects because as I was describing to you, the higher manifestation and the lower octave of these energies, well, you could be one or the other. So my job is to put out what the higher possibilities are, and then where it's possible with these energies that you could take a wrong turn, like when we were talking about the Mars energy, either being, this lust for life that makes you a go-getter and protective of the people you love, or it could make you a dictator. It could make you a petty, abusive dictator. That's completely up to the person.
Hmm.
So no, I have no, except of course I've seen your demeanor. So,
Right. And so now so if you if it's let's say if I were would I be like a client of yours? Like how do you follow up in this realm and in this world with, this astrological charting? Like would I have it redone sometime down the road, or?
Well, there's several answers to that question, because on one hand, one reading can certainly never cover everything in the chart. I mean, there were, we spent an hour and a half, whatever, on on just the items that I mentioned. Well, I could have gone into even much greater depth with each particular item, and there are other planets to talk about. So in a sense, I feel that I gave you a good sketch of what's going on and highlighting the key aspects. Unless you wanted to go into great detail about a particular area, let's say you said, oh, I want to know what the description in my chart is for someone I would really get along with as a lover. Well, then I would look at the house and the planets and the signs related to that and say, well, this is what it's saying.
Interesting.
So you might want to delve into a thing, or what does it say about my career? And then you might want to delve into more detail. Oh, by the way, speaking of that, if I remember correctly, offbeat spirituality is something you should share with a partner. And the other answer to that question is, although I don't do these as much, I probably will in the future, but the planets are moving in the sky. And so as they do different periods, different opportunities open up to you. For instance, we were talking about Saturn earlier, and so when it moves through a particular house, like you said, you're redoing your house. It's in the fourth house of home. So I can tell someone beforehand, oh, it looks like this opportunity is coming up for you. Jupiter is entering such and such house, put all the chips on the table, dream big here. As a matter of fact, I think all right. I mentioned to you that I looked up a few things for you.
Mm-hmm. You do thorough work, Maxine.
What's that?
You do thorough work.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a Capricorn, Moon in Virgo. We're very thorough.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think I remember, your moon is changing. Oh, this was interesting. Your moon, okay. There's also what's called progressed planets. They're not actually in the sky. It's confusing it's hard to explain, but symbolically, these planets are having an influence, are moving along through your chart, having an influence. So for instance, your moon is in Libra, but there's also what's called a progressed moon. All our planets evolve. We keep the spirit of the natal chart, of the natal moon. You'll always be a Libra moon. You will never not be a Libra moon. That will always be the overriding feel. But we also have overlays. And your moon has been most recently in Gemini. The fast pace, fast talking, language oriented, learning oriented, speedy. That's where your moon has been. So your happiness, taking care of yourself, has to do with all that movement, that travel, that fast energy. But you're actually about to you're just on the precipice. You're just about, your moon is just moving into Cancer. Oh, that's funny. That coincides with the 4th house Saturn. Oh, interesting how it works that way. So your moon is moving into Cancer, which means that the next span of time, there'll be a turning inward. There'll be a move towards the feeling of home, security, easier on yourself, more sensitivity, more nurturing. It's called, so your evolving feelings, your evolving emotional needs will move from that more speedy sense to let me move a little inward, let me take care of myself. And would also actually correspond with, sure, wanting a nice new home to withdraw into. The interesting thing about that I noticed was, so your moon is moving into this planet that's about retreat and safety and home and family, but it's moving into the house of travel. It's moving into the house of expansiveness and travel. I was trying to conceptualize what that would be. Now, of course, it could take lots of forms. I mean, the most obvious one is you all get into the RV and you go travel, because your home is on wheels. So I don't know how to interpret that. You, however, probably would. Do you have any ideas?
It's funny because pre-COVID, because I'm such a workaholic, I had to sit down with the following year's calendar, and I made a point that year, I need to take long weekends to get away and travel to different spots, even if it's just 3 days in a different city, just to recharge the batteries and do that. And we couldn't do it. So literally yesterday morning, I booked a flight to go to Amsterdam. In April, I'm in Amsterdam and Brussels. I'm going away on a family vacation, and I think the Carolinas. In July, I'm going to Baja California in October. So I booked it all and set that calendar stuff yesterday morning, because it's I have to start doing this again. I've just been so buried with work, and I miss traveling. I got to be out there, whether it's reconnecting with friends or finding new places, learning on the go, immersed in other cultures. So I need to make that a priority moving forward.
Oh, wow. So you were getting the 9th house vibe. You felt it coming on.
Oh, yeah. It's been coming on. Yeah. That, and then coupled with, the home, this has been, it's a big house that's mostly just framed in. And we live in the 4-room middle floor. There's no access to upstairs. There's no access to the basement. You got to, so basically it was a small house, like a salt box house that got framed all around it, but it was never completed. So we've been living in this original salt box for 11 years now, almost. And it's cramped quarters, even though there's just 2 of us and we have a big dog and we don't require much. It's time. We need to actually build our own home and feel comfortable here. It just feels like we're living in someone else's place still, like we're in a summer rental that won't end. So that's been unsettling, but now it's starting to come into focus. So those are great. 2 big changes on the way. Yeah.
Oh, well, thanks for giving me that feedback.
No, I appreciate it. I just think this is such a sweet gesture of you to spend that much time, delving into my chart. I'm super impressed and very appreciative of the time you spent with me, Maxine.
Oh, thank you. It was so much my pleasure. I so much enjoy throwing myself into this. It's, it's like a mystery that you unravel.
Yeah. Well, it feels weird to say goodbye now.
Now that we've gotten together to know each other so well.
Yeah.
And again, thank you so much for this opportunity to do this.
And so, Maxine, if people want to find you or learn more about you, do you have a YouTube channel or do you have a website?
I have a website, Inner Calling Astrology, which again, I'm going to, I'm going to send you my card.
Yep, I'll have that up here for everybody to see. Sure.
Oh, thanks so much.
Yeah, and I'd love to continue the conversation sometime as well.
All right, let's do that.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, Maxine Perchuk, thank you so much. Say hi to everyone back in Staten Island. For us here from one coast to another. So really appreciative of your time today. And thanks again. And looking forward to getting to know you better as well.
Thanks. Ditto. You're very welcome.